This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and you're listening to Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have a wonderful guest on the show. I gotta say, I love the Blues Brothers. I'm a huge fan of the Blues Brothers. I would have been 8 years old when that movie came out in 1980, and love the music, the soundtrack, the artist. It is just a celebration of blues music and crash humor, no pun intended. But folks, I have one of the Blues Brothers band members on the phone with me. I have Murphy Dunne of Murph and the Magic Tones, in between Blues Brothers gigs, waiting for Belushi to get out of prison. How do you do, Murphy?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thank you for thinking of me, and hello out there to your audience.
Yeah, have you ever been out this way to the New Brunswick area?
No, I've been, the only two places I've been, well, I flew up to, I've taken a train across Canada, but most of the time I've spent is either in Montreal or Toronto.
Well, they are the popular places. Yes. Nobody seems to know where New Brunswick is.
Well, I'm sure this interview will change that forever.
Well, I've been getting it out there, you know. You're my first interview from the Blues Brothers, and I gotta say, I love that film. Like, congratulations on being part of a great movie like that.
Well, you know, I've got to say, it's for those of you who believe in God.
I do.
It's his blessing or fate or something, or my mom in heaven praying that someone takes my petite claim to artistry and finds a way to use me. But it was fate or God, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, well, as they say in the movie, we're on a mission from God.
A mission from God. Danny's got that perfect voice for it. That's right. It's very hard and very Chicago-like, and it was obviously used later by SNL. The Bears, the Bulls, Coach Ditka. You know, the real hard consonant.
Yeah, I gotta say though that you know, with I gotta ask though, how you got your start in music, because I'm pretty sure that happened before the Blues Brothers. Like, I know you're.
Well,
yeah.
It's I've always loved it, and you find out this from a lot of guys who play. I wanted to impress women. I did early on, and I kind of fell in love with, you know, I'm one of those latent heterosexuals who always loved women, and I thought that this would be a way to get closer to them. I'm, you know, not a big guy, couldn't play sports, and I'm kind of a lightweight, you know, about 150 pounds, so, you know, boxing or football wasn't for me, and I'm only 5'10", so basketball wasn't for me, and so I started playing, and you know, all of the people that my parents would send me to for lessons were hugely competent, and I would end up asking them to play for me as opposed to me playing for them, and you know, that just increased my love of piano, and I kept going, and I started to play because I could play a little bit. There's a theater in Chicago where I met John Belushi called Second City, and obviously Dan Aykroyd, you know, was from Second City in Toronto, and so that's where I met John, and John knew I was a big fan of the blues in Chicago, and then I met. I had friends who worked at Chess Records.
Okay.
And one of them said to me, she said, you know, Chicago's the home of the blues, yet we've never had anything in Chicago to honor the blues. There should be a concert. And I had some political connections, and I went down and I talked to the powers that be at City Hall. And for some reason, they believed they could make this work. So I hooked up in a business-like manner with Willie Dixon, the famous blues songwriter, you know, Seventh Son, Hoochie Coochie Man, Little Red Rooster. I mean, there's so many classics. Probably the most famous, in the top three of the great blues songwriters. And we became tight, and he and I produced it. He handled the talent, and I basically handled the production of the event, and it was held in Grant Park in Chicago in 1969. And it was, written by 12 Hours of Blues on August 30th. And, Muddy Waters was there and Coco Taylor and all these people, which really even brought me closer to music. And then I started playing with bands in Chicago. Nobody but you would know, but, it became an avocation. And then I was doing comedy albums, because when you come from Second City, you got to be funny in one way or another to keep working. So, and my acting career started to take off in '68, and went to New York with Second City, and I started traveling around the Midwest with the touring company, and so then I started, doing music for the comedy albums for Atlantic Records. Then, I traveled. I ended up producing, through no fault of my own, a concert with Sly and the Family Stone, and there was a riot, strangely enough, inspired by some politicized gang activity on the south side of Chicago. And I decided I'm going to, besides the weather, I want to get out of this place. So we moved as the comedy act, moved to California, and I met a lot of really wonderful musicians out here. And one of them was a guy named Waddy Wachtel, who plays with now Joe Walsh, but he's out with Stevie Nicks a lot, and he's part of Keith Richards' band, his other band, which is called the Expensive Winos. So Waddy and I, worked together musically, and we did demos together, and I started to get work as a composer for films, not big films, but budget films, and I started doing more of that and started working with more musicians, and in the loop of John Belushi, knew I did that, and he'd come out to my house and he stayed with me, and he knew I played, and then he kind of became famous, and SNL took off, and he was doing a movie called Old Boyfriends, and he would normally use Paul Schaefer, who was I would hold his cape for him anytime he wanted, because he's a legend unto himself and an icon, and justifiably so. And I guess that Paul wasn't available, so he asked me to play keyboards on Old Boyfriends. So I did, and that locked me in closer with John. And so I kept doing that. And I was very, I must say, and as Martin Short would say, I must say, was very excited for John when I saw the Blues Bar concept on Saturday Night Live. And I thought, oh my God, he's working with Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper, who I had known from my producing festivals, because I produced more than that one festival. So I don't know anybody who wasn't a huge fan of Booker T and the MGs. And, Duck and Steve were half the band. And so I just said, oh, I'm so jealous for John, this fabulous band that Paul Schaefer put together. So I know I wasn't really in the same category as Paul Schaefer. So I was very happy for them. And then, I'm trying to put this in some kind of sequence, I started to get more jobs in films. There's a Paramount film called The Big Bus that was looking for special material, and they needed a kind of a smarmy guy to play the piano and write songs like 6 Months to Live, and just really silly stuff. And then they were putting together the music for the Blues Brother, and I said, I'm envious. I'm so happy for you, John. And then Paul Schaefer had a conflict I had a gig with Gilda Radner on Broadway. So that happened. It was very last minute. John Belushi said to John Landis, call Murph. And I told him, I said, some of this stuff I won't be able to play, so have at least a backup person for the organ and some of the other stuff. And they said, no problem, we want you, Murph. So I ended up being in the movie and playing and singing and meeting the band. And it was an extraordinary band, and way beyond my poor efforts, to keep up with them. But we became all tight friends. And in the interim, Duck Dunn, who was the bassist, as you know, he passed away recently, and Mr. Fabulous, the horn player, the trumpet player, who was first chair at Juilliard, he also passed away. So I'm suggesting to you, Greg, that you get on the horn and get the living members for any more interviews that you do, because time is a fleeting, and they're just wonderful people.
Actually, I have reached out to Steve Cropper and Blue Lou on their web pages, but I didn't hear back. But I will give them a shot.
I can understand. If I talk them and remember, I'll remind them of our conversation. But they are extremely busy guys. Blue Lou is typically out with James Taylor all the time. And when he isn't, he's doing concert gigs for people like Barbra Streisand, and I saw him 2 weeks ago on the Tony Bennett 90th. He's always in the background on any big concert you see on television. So he's probably one of the first calls that they make. And Steve Cropper has got a huge career as a producer. And I saw him a couple of months ago when I went to France with the original Blues Brothers band, which is a band that's been together for 20 years, including, Blue Lou and Steve for those gigs. And they told me they've been trying to find some scheduling times that I was available so I could be part of that band on a more regular basis. And that's what Blue, has been saying for the last 6 months. So Blue called me last night. I've yet to return the call, but I will do. Was that as long-winded an answer as you've had so far as an interviewer?
Yeah, but you know what? It's great stuff, People don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you, I was going to say, do they bring, when the Streisand and all these people, James Taylor, do they bring the chicken wire for Blue Lou?
Only Streisand. James Taylor, he's too soft-spoken. But Streisand drives people crazy. So bring out the chicken wire, put it around Lou, and that's how it usually works.
I love
but
that.
He does huge concert stuff all over the world. He's just wonderful.
Yeah, he had that long hair, and he comes in there, and it was chicken wire, Bob's Country Bunker.
I loved his delivery. Wasn't that great?
That was a great delivery, yeah. Yeah, and of course, you yourself, in this film, the first time we see you, you're at the Ramada Room. Are you still performing there?
No, not at the Ramada Room anymore. I'm in another band. It's called The Enzymes, with the active ingredients, and we perform around Los Angeles and record. And if you go to CD Baby, you can find The Enzymes and listen a little bit to some of the stuff. But so I'm with those guys, Larry Treadwell, Howard Green, and Rob Lewine, and Roxanne Mayweather and Phyllis Bailey Brooks, our two background vocalists, who some people refer to as our background vocalists. And when we started out, we were toying with the idea of calling ourselves the White Man Group. That's fun. And then when the girls joined the band, we were going to be White Man Group plus 2. Now we're the Black Girl Group plus 4.
So when you go on tour, you go to the Ramada Room and Bob's Country Bunker. Are those two your stops?
Well, we just go by the shrine. Each one of those places has a massive shrine, over 20 feet tall, and and all in granite or brass. I can't remember which is which. And obviously, I'm the center of attraction, and people have to do one of two things: bow, uh, kiss the hem of my dress, or put money at the foot of the statue.
Well, listen, you play the keyboards. Do you play any other instruments, or is that your?
No, this is I play keyboards. I'm never far away.
Well, I gotta say, like I said, I love this movie. Of course, John Landis, hot after National Lampoon's Animal House, come to direct this and dared to put up with the Belushi shenanigans again, but.
Well, obviously, very, very close, and there was a lot of mutual respect from and to both Johns, and they had a great relationship. And you're right, it was vexing for John Landis sometimes because it was shenanigans. You know, he was an unusual guy, great fellow, loved people, was not a snob by any way. You know, people would take themselves too seriously. And he was very, very kind. He had a lot of energy, and you find a lot of people with a lot of energy get bored very easily. Some people, and John was that way. He was always wanted to, if you're on the plane, let's play cards, let's do something, let's go. I'm gonna go over to your house, Murph. We'll listen to music. Come on, let's go do it. Let's go now. Come on. And he would wind up, in the 3 a.m. He would get a limo driver and a friend or two, and he was up at my house at 3:00 a.m. with Chevy Chase.
Okay.
And yeah, he'd say, "Hey, Murph, so we'd stop by. We go, John, what are you doing? No, just come on, get over it. And he'd tickle me or push me around. Get over it. Come on in here." And we'd have a beer or something, because he was bored. The time of Hollywood time was not right for John, because Hollywood is a very laid back place, and the movie, TV business, all that stuff is very slow moving. People wait for a meeting. We're going to take a meeting here. We're going to go over there. We'll have a lunch. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to work. He wanted to stay busy. It's just part of who he was. And this town, seductive to some people, it became, seductive to him in some ways. And he would always be out, watching music, listening to music, going places, doing things. He'd disappear for a couple of days, and then people would find him at Hugh Hefner's. That's not a bad place to end up.
No.
Yes, especially 30 years ago.
Well, I thought John Belushi was immensely talented, and
Good fellow, yeah.
I had he still been alive, I gotta wonder where he would be today.
Sure.
Yeah, because
I think he'd be a close friend of Jack Black's.
You know what?
I think he has similar energy.
I agree. I never thought of that, but that would, you get a point there. But
it's rare that I make an intelligent comment, so you'll have to do a lot of editing on this interview.
Well, I heard a few stories. I was watching a Blues Brothers documentary on television not too long ago, and we know, of course, Belushi had some addiction problems, and I heard one of the band members took off his belt and laid a whipping on somebody trying to sell him drugs. Is there any? Was you there for that?
No, I wasn't there from that. I know that Bernie Brillstein was very concerned about John, and he wanted to make sure that he stayed away from the powders, as Dan Aykroyd used to refer to him. He had a problem with powder. And I remember at the end of one of the concerts, he was just watching over John. Johnny, stay away from that guy, or stay away from this guy. And at that time, it was endemic in the industry for people to do a lot of coke. It was very popular out here. And I'm guessing it was popular all across the country. but I was here, and I knew it was very popular in the industry, so I could understand him doing that. And I also heard a similar story from being around Duck regarding, when Eric Clapton was getting clean, that Clapton's manager wanted nobody backstage with Eric Clapton because he was concerned that it would impact his health, and now that's a good friend, and obviously it worked out fine for him.
Well, one of the saddest books I ever read was that one, Wired, and I'm going to tell you, it was a hard read to hear about John's final days.
Well, Dan said, listen, there's a book coming up called Wired. I want nobody to read it. It's assassinating your friend and parents, and don't read it, have nothing to do with it. And so I didn't read it, out of respect for John, although I was interviewed, for hours and hours. And of course I had nothing bad to say about John. I thought there wasn't anything bad to say. Did he have a problem, with the powders, as Dan said? Absolutely. I think at the time there were hundreds of thousands of people in America who were having problems with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, John certainly had a lot of, like he said, he was in Animal House and barely said a sentence and had all that energy. And then he does the Blues Brothers. He has a similar energy, but he's also got all the, he can sing and he can...
Yes, he can. Well, that reminds me, Greg, of one of the comments that he is famous for. He said, people can say that I don't know how to sing the blues, but I certainly know how to sell it. And he did. And you talk to anybody who's had a career in the last 30 years playing music, especially blues music, they'll say, it was my favorite movie of all time. They loved it. He sold the blues, and he brought huge monies to a lot of, black families that didn't have any money. They got a lot of royalties for those tunes. And I remember him saying, I'm going to do a tune, a famous song by either Willie Mabon or crippled Clarence Lofton. One of them wrote the song I Don't Know, which is kind of a boogie-woogie song. And, you can hear it from on the albums. And he said, because they're still fighting about the publishing, because there's a lot of money. I mean, that was a highly sold movie, and when that happens, there's money to be made. And there are a lot of black families whose ancestors wrote those tunes. And they made a lot of money, which is great.
Yeah. And of course, Dan Aykroyd, I had the pleasure of meeting him about 10 years ago when he was doing a wine signing here in Fredericton, and I had my picture taken with him. He signed my Blues Brothers DVD, and quite a gentleman. I really enjoyed meeting him. Yeah.
He is certainly, and a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
With a capital B, he's a brilliant man. And one of the most interesting persons, if not the most interesting person I ever met.
I heard a rumor that they're supposed to be remaking the Blues Brothers. Now, if that's a truth, I hope it's not true. I don't know
what you mean. There was a second movie.
Yeah, I know that, but I heard they're supposed to be remaking it, and I'm like, don't remake it. It was great the first time out.
Right. Yeah, it was.
Now, I think the second one, I felt so bad that they weren't able to bring in Jim Belushi, because I think the movie might have worked.
There was a conflict in show business. He was doing a television series, and they couldn't extricate him from it.
Yeah, because I think maybe the second one might have succeeded had they gotten...
Well, it was a different kind of movie. It was, I think it's coming from the pen of Landis and Aykroyd, but in my view, mostly Dan Aykroyd. Probably it was more family oriented. He was in the mentoring process, and I think if Jim was in it, it might have been different. I liked the second movie a great deal, and I thought it was very sweet, and it was funny. So that's basically. I really don't have any complaints about it. And getting the chance to hang with those guys who I had known from before was just the most exciting. And my daughter was 2 years old at the time.
Okay.
So we were in Toronto for several months, and just to be part, the band was so nice to her, and as was John Goodman, and it was just a loving and lovable experience for everybody.
And of course, the humor in the Blues Brothers, like that whole thing where they drove through and destroyed the mall.
Right.
That was just priceless. All the damage, and of course all those cars there at the end, all flipping up there, and it kind of took Smokey and the Bandit to new heights, I think. Only except.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. I didn't think of Smokey and the Bandit in the same. The same idea, but it had that feeling that when I think of Smokey and the Bandits, I think of the car in the air, and I think that may have inspired some of the stunts. It was fun to, and also one of my favorite performers in the world was in Smoking, which is Jerry Reed, the fabulous guitar player.
I love Jerry Reed.
You got the elevator, I got the shafts,
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I was listening to one of his songs today, Another Puff.
Really?
Yeah, Another Puff.
He was something.
And when you're hot, you're hot.
When you're hot, you're hot.
He was quite a storyteller, Jerry Reed. I remember when he passed away, we lost a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did some records with Chet Atkins that were classics.
Yeah, well, he was a great guitar player.
Oh, God, what a picker.
Yeah. But yeah, you had some great band members in there, as we mentioned, Steve Colonel Cropper and Donald Duck Dunn and Willie Too Big Hall. Why'd they call him Too Big? He looked kind of small.
Well, it depends upon what you saw. What part of his body was too small?
Okay, I walked into that one.
Yeah, you did. So you may want to edit that out. But that's how in the South, there are women who are individual entrepreneurs and who are females, and Willie was well known in the South, and he couldn't avail himself of the services because he was too big.
Okay. I just saw just a small guy. I'm like, okay.
No. It was something else completely. And it was during my scene where everybody else everybody in the band knew why he was referred to as that. And everybody in the Magic Tones, Steve the Colonel Cropper, Donald Duck Dunn, Tom Bones Malone, everybody else had a nickname. So when I introduced them all and I threw in Willie Too Big Hall, in a very sotto voce kind of way, John and Dan were in front of me cracking up. They were laughing during the scene because I had put Too Big in the movie.
Yeah, and of course, you had Blue Lou, and you had Matt Guitar Murphy, and
Mr. Fabulous.
Mr. Fabulous. I got to talk about Mr. Fabulous for a second, because I think one of the scenes that still to this day cracks me up so much is where they first recruit him at the restaurant. And of course,
the restaurant was called the Chez Paul, famous restaurant in Chicago, French restaurant. And Alan Rubin I think it was written for him. I think Danny wrote it for him. He had the perfect ability to stand on his ego, which was appropriately immense. He's a very, very funny guy and a fabulous hang, and he just was this wonderful character. So playing a snooty person, and he frequented, he had fabulous, expensive taste. He frequented excellent restaurants. And he was somewhat of a cook. He would make one of his favorite dishes was chocolate souffle. And he traveled with his own kit to put together his martinis.
Okay.
And when he was on the road, he would do that. His own glass, his own shaker, I think his own vermouth, and he just was such a special guy. And so he was no stranger to French restaurants. And I think Dan knew what kind of snob he could be to the benefit of the film, and it worked perfectly. What a great guy! What a funny guy! What a character! He was just wonderful. You would have loved him. Everybody.
Yeah.
I miss him so much.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, that family that was sitting around that table that was annoyed with Belushi and Aykroyd, I love those little shots. Of course, there was this male and female, two older daughters, and a little girl. Now, the little girl stood out to me because there was two or three shots where she kind of looks bemused, very amused at the behavior of the Blues Brothers. And
one of the girls, so you put a little history behind it, not the little ones, but one of the girls was an adult model. By that I mean she was older than 18. And I can't remember how old Alan Rubin was at the time, but that girl was his girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Her name was Larry Taylor. She's beautiful, very fragile, very thin. And so next time you see it, look for the prettiest girl at the table, and it was Larry Taylor.
Okay, I did not know that. I was going to say...
Great information.
One of my favorite shots, though, was when Belushi turns around and goes, "How much for your little girl?" And that girl's bemused face, she just pops, makes that sudden jumps there, her and her pigtails.
The women. How much for the women?
I laugh at that little girl's reaction because she looks so amused and innocent. And she's the only one that's amused with them. And then he makes that comment, and she just does that little jump, and it was so perfect for not saying anything.
The little girl, right. And did you remember who the waiter was? I don't know if you know who Pee Wee Herman was.
Pee Wee Herman, yeah. Paul Rubens.
He was the waiter, Paul Rubens, yeah.
Yeah, he was all annoyed with...
Yes, he was. It was above him. Oh, my.
Above him.
Yeah. It was wonderful.
And you guys had some I gotta say, the Blues Brothers was a beautiful tribute, not just to blues music, but how it celebrates a lot of gifted blues artists, like Cab Calloway singing Minnie the Moocher.
Wasn't that great?
That was fantastic, and a great set too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, they spared no expense. I mean, he made a great movie, and with great everything. That the costume designer was Deborah Nadoolman, famous costume designer, and also John Landis's wife.
Okay.
But she also was the costume designer on Indiana Jones. She just had a big exhibit through the museum, through LA County Museum, telling stories about Indiana Jones. She and Harrison Ford spent all night before the shooting scratching his leather jacket to make it look worn. And she also mentioned what was interesting about the character of Indiana Jones was that he always wore a leather jacket, but he was always in a jungle where you would never wear a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very funny. I never thought of it. Here comes Indiana Jones with his leather jacket. Why is he wearing a leather jacket? That's 110 degrees in the jungle.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. But yeah, Cab Calloway, of course, played the guy that had taken in the Blues Brothers and had raised them. And then, of course, you had James Brown playing the preacher. And
he was fabulous.
He was so good.
So good.
He goes, "Do you see the light?"
That was in the second one, I think. But he was fabulous. I don't mean to interject that, but he was wonderful. He was wonderful in it, and he was great in the second one. I would have preferred a more up-tempo. Can't remember the song in the second one, but I would have preferred a more up-tempo because he sings a song to a woman, and I just prefer an up-tempo song. I love watching him dance, move around,
Yep.
and that's my favorite part of James Brown. But he was very cordial. I have an autographed fan from the second one from him. He said, Murphy, let's go on the road. I'll make some money. James.
And how great was Ray Charles?
Yeah, I love the shot. It's an iconic shot. The cameraman. If you look in Ray's in the first one, obviously he wasn't in the second one. You look at the sunglasses, and you can see the reflection of the keys. But let me tell you the story. I don't know if you remember or were ever told this story. John, I think, had partied through the night, and he was always very on guard, and he didn't blow any lines very often. And I'm standing next to him, and we're right in front of Ray Charles, and the scene progresses with a black boy behind us who's reaching to steal a guitar.
Yep.
You remember that?
Yep.
And then Ray Charles pulls out the gun and lets fire a couple of shots. And it's a big caliber weapon, a couple of shots, and he says the line, "It's a shame what boys will do today," or something like that. And I'm standing next to John, and we're very close to Ray, and the kid goes to take the guitar, and Ray pulls out the gun too soon, and we're right in front of the gun. And you can get hurt from those guns.
Oh.
Because there's a shoot of fire that comes out. And he goes for it, and I push John out of the way and get out of the way myself. And as soon as I push him out of the way, bam, 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 bam. And John Landis yells, "Cut, cut, cut, cut." And Ray Charles went, "Say, did I miss my cue?" He said, "Yes, you did. Take the gun from Mr. Charles, please." Yes, thank you. We're going to take 5, and yeah, Ray, you missed it. And John Belushi was like, "Oh, what happened?" Because it happened rather fast. But it was kind of funny after the sweat was mopped up off the floor. Everybody was laughing.
I gotta say, it was a wonderful tribute to Ray Charles, because I remember you're testing out the keys on that piano, and you saying,
"Yeah, and what's wrong with this piano?"
And
the action's all broken.
What I found interesting is that, as broken down as the piano was, it worked fine when Ray Charles played it.
Yeah,
that's the magic of Ray Charles.
Absolutely. Well, of course, it was to play back. That wasn't the keyboard that was used, but he could make a ukulele sound good, a one-string ukulele. He was marvelous. It was just great being around him, you know.
And of course,
being around Aretha too.
I'm just gonna bring her up. I think her scene in the diner where she's putting down the law on Matt Guitar Murphy. That was such a beautiful scene. I love that scene where she's singing that song.
And I love Blue Lou walking across. That's kind of a tradition for rhythm and blues saxophonists, walking the bar, and he was walking the counter.
It's funny. She had him whipped because he wouldn't leave until.
Yeah, are you kidding me? You've never seen a man who was whipped by a woman? Are you married, Greg?
Nope. I watched this scene and I'm reminded, okay, I'm happy being single.
There you go.
Oh, poor Matt Guitar Murphy had no problem walking out of there, but old Blue Lou.
No, he didn't. He didn't have any. Oh, I would have been frightened to death.
Blue Lou was frightened.
He was right behind Matt when he walked out, man.
She looks at him, she goes, "Well, go on, damn it." He rushes up.
Go on. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that was great. Aretha Franklin was just great in that scene, and that was one of my favorite musical numbers too.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it had great character. It was great character. Fabulous.
Yeah, and of course you had a nice moment with John Lee Hooker as well. Singing,
oh yeah.
Boom Boom.
You know, it's a funny story. I think I found it funny. Anyway, John Landis called up John Lee Hooker to ask him to be in the second movie. And he said, John, we want you to be in your second movie. And Johnny Hooker said, I've never been in a movie.
Yeah.
It was he didn't remember ever being in.
Oh.
He had no idea, so which may have signaled why he wasn't in the second movie. But I would have loved to be able to say that I was in a movie again with Johnny Hooker.
Yeah, and he was so good just singing Boom Boom there, and you had all those shots
boom,
of
boom, 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 gonna take on. Yeah, great.
Yeah, and that shows like the market all around. Great scenery, and locations.
Oh, yeah, the production designer did a great job.
Yeah.
Woolsey, I think his name was. I can't remember.
And of course, you had other interesting actors in it as well. I mean, it's sad because we just recently lost Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher, yeah. What were
They were close. John and Dan were close with Carrie, and I'm glad that casting choice was made because it was perfect.
Yeah.
And Twiggy, do you remember Twiggy?
I do. She was at the gas station.
Gas station, right? A lot of people forget that was Twiggy.
Oh, you remember because she got stood up there at the end. Dan never made it back.
Dan never made it back.
Oh, yeah, beautiful woman.
Oh my.
Yes. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Dan make it back there.
That's the night. I see in movies. You want a happy ending. You want the guy who was belittled put his white hat back on and win, and you want the romantic couple to get back together from high water or hell, and I wanted that too. I can certainly identify with that, Greg.
Yep. But I love it. He fills her gas tank up, even though he does not work there, and he says that'll be $95.
That'll be $95.
She just hands it to him. It's like,
well, obviously she's gobsmacked by him because he's such a handsome guy, wearing those sunglasses and black tie and black suit, smelling of cigarettes, and a hat. At night. Was it at night? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, that was at night, just before they blew the gas station up.
Wonderful, huh?
Yeah, but Carrie Fisher, of course, played. I won't give it away, but she was out too.
No, don't give it away. But one of the most interesting things about it, and one of the things I got totally wrong, was I thought this was going to be a big flop. The movie. I thought it was going to be a flop because the history of comedy says you can't wear sunglasses and do comedy.
Oh. Because
the eyes are so important to see. But this was a scene that I thought at the time reinforced my prediction that it wasn't going to be a hit, was that John took the sunglasses off.
Oh, yeah.
For the scene in the tunnel.
Yep.
Baby. It was great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And of course, Eddie Murphy would reenact that again in The Nutty Professor too. That whole thing where he goes through all the things that kept him from being where he was supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah. But Carrie Fisher, of course, sitting there doing her nails, and they curl up and die.
They curl up and die, place. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt sad when Carrie Fisher passed because I had this memory when I was young when my mom had bought me a Princess Leia action figure when I was...
Did you still have it?
I don't know. Of course, me being young, you're reckless with these toys when you're young.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And when you get old, you think, oh, I'll never... I don't want a toy, because I'm an adult now. But I'm sure you can buy, remakes of it. But, yeah, she was an exciting person to be around. I knew her socially, and not to the extent that I'd like, but I certainly loved the time I had with her. Because she was friends with Penny Marshall, and I'm friendly with Penny.
Ah, Laverne and Shirley. I used to watch that show.
As a matter of fact, there was another band that came out of Laverne and Shirley. It was called Lenny and the Squigtones.
I remember that.
With Michael McKean,
yep.
David Lander, and Christopher Guest.
And that would go to form This Is Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Right. And so Lenny and the Squigtones. I was in that band too, so I got a chance to travel with those guys. And I like comedy and I like music, and I like it when they're both together too. So, but I was not in Spinal Tap, and really, it wasn't my kind of music anyway. They found a great keyboard player to be with them, but that was a terrific movie too. And Paul Schaefer was in that one. He was wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, another fella that no longer with us either, but very funny guy, John Candy.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that John Landis said to me, was that John Belushi came to him, and he said, listen, John, hire John Candy. Hire him because, he really has been out of work for a long time and could really use the work. And this was at a concert, I think when Booker T was playing with the Blues Brothers on keyboards, which is more in keeping with the quality of the musicianship in that band. And and then John Landis said, he couldn't get arrested then. He said, now I can't afford him for a movie. And it was wonderful for John Candy, because I worked with him in a film called Going Berserk. John Candy was one of the sweetest people on the planet, and he came up to me and said, Murph. He said, what's your trailer like? I said, my trailer? He said, yeah, are they taking care of you? I said, I have a little room. It's perfect for me if I want to take a nap or anything else. I can do that. It's just fine, It's funny. He said, you should have a trailer. John Candy was lobbying to get me a trailer so I could. I don't know what I needed a trailer for. But John Candy, I did some writing with him. He was just one of the sweetest people you'd ever meet in your life.
I loved it in the film where they go to arrest John and Dan. Of course, they're stuck in that little tiny room. I can't understand how anybody made to sleep there with the train or the subway going on outside.
Yeah, the elevated train.
And John, it's perfect timing. He kicks the door open. That's when Carrie Fisher pulls that button and blows the place up.
Right.
But
they eventually find out it's Wrigley Field is the address that was given.
Yeah. And
Funny.
Speaking of which, Henry Gibson playing the Nazi.
Wonderful casting. Wasn't that great?
Yeah. I saw him later in Magnolia. What a terrific actor.
Oh, he's terrific. He is just wonderful. Is he still with us? I don't know.
He's gone.
Oh.
I looked him up because I was watching Magnolia one night, and he was pretty old in that, and I was like, I wonder if he's still with us. And no, he's gone. But I remember though the car went airborne and did that big long fall.
Right, and the guy who's driving turns to him and said, "I've always loved you."
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah, there's a few people gone. Another guy, very underrated actor, and I've always thought he was good, and I don't know if he got his dues the right way. But Charles Napier, who of course played the lead singer of the Good Old Boys, loved him.
I loved him. I saw him not real recently, but he was one of the people in Silence of the Lambs that was killed.
Yeah.
And he was terrific in that as well. Excuse me. And we had a nice long talk about the Blues Brothers, and he loved it and had fun in it. And the Good Old Boys.
I like that. He's they put glue on the brakes,
the accelerator,
and he's like, Bob, I think we have a problem. And they crash in and they over the harbor and they're in the water, and I like it shows a shot of them, and he's sitting there behind the steering wheel tapping his thumbs, and then Bob stands up and he goes, "Don't you say an effing word." I mean,
I think that's the same. That was shot at night on the back lot of Universal. I think it's the same piece of water that has the fake shark in it that they use for the ride, for the tour of Universal lot. They have a fake shark, Jaws, as it were. As it was known in the movie, it was called Bruce. The people who worked on it, but anyway, I think that's the same pond that Bob, the Good Old Boys RV flew into.
Yeah, and he was also really young when he was in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls as well, you know.
Well, your filmology is certainly better than my memory in that regard. You must have a cinematic dictionary there.
Well, I review movies. I've been doing so
Oh, that
since,
would be a reason.
yeah, I've been doing so since 1996. So, and I've got Beyond the Valley of the Dolls home as well as the Blues Brothers. So,
Do you have Oh God?
is that on Blu-ray yet?
I don't know. Do you have High
I
Anxiety?
well, I'm going to tell you, I love Oh God.
Well, I love it too. I played the court reporter in that one,
Yeah.
and I played the piano player. I didn't play, but I played the piano player in High Anxiety. So I had a chance to work with Mel Brooks again.
Oh, Mel Brooks. Yeah, Mel Brooks. What was Mel Brooks like?
He had all, and still does, has all the energy of a used car lot. All that electricity,
Yeah.
at night, all those things are lit up. And so I was coming in to audition for it, and I said, Murphy, come in. And there was a big couch. He said, sit on the divan. Sit on the sectional. Sit over there. He said, now I sing this song. Johnny Morris and I wrote it, called High Anxiety. And you play the piano. And I'm sitting on the couch. So he goes, High Anxiety. And I pretend to play an arpeggio. He said, you've got the job. You know just where the arpeggio is. Perfect. Leave your sizes. You got a job. Perfect. I'll see you on the set. I said, no, Mel. I've got more. I said, so Madeline Kahn is sitting to my left. He goes, yeah. And I said, and there's people around the table. He said, the piano? He said, yeah. I said, keep singing and I'll show you what I can do. He goes, it's useless to say. And then I go, this guy's brilliant. Anxiety. He's better than Sinatra. So I started improvising, all these compliments. He said, funny, but forget it. It's my scene, not yours. Now get out of here.
And I love Madeline Kahn.
Wasn't she great?
Yeah.
But I must say that if I have to watch Young Frankenstein again, I have my eyes on Terry Garr.
I love Young Frankenstein, and yes, love Terry Garr. She was also in Oh God.
Yeah, she is. As a matter of fact, well, I won't go into it.
Yeah. Well,
I won't go into that story, Greg. Because, we have to have some privacy.
Oh, well,
Greg, I'm going to call this a little short because some things I have to do. Do you have enough stuff with me?
I do. I was going to ask about, Oh God, you worked with George Burns and John Denver, both no longer with us.
Absolutely. I remember one of the stories that I have is because a lot of that movie took place in a courtroom because it kept coming back to the people, cross-examining George Burns. And Carl Reiner had brought in, for the first day of shooting in the courtroom, 2 large 35mm cameras. Now, them being large and them being 35mm is not unusual, but 2 cameras, you really don't need them. And he said, halfway through the first day, he said, I'm going to let the second camera go because George Burns, who had speech after speech after speech, all these lines, and he never went up on them. It was perfect every time. So Carl Reiner said, I'm gonna let the other camera go because George is perfect. And he was a tiny, tiny guy. And but the quality of his acting was so good that the extras who played the jurors, they couldn't keep their eyes off him.
Yeah.
And it was just bespoke, great things about him as an actor. It was great. And when I'd leave, the lot in the evenings, I could see him driving his Cadillac, and he was so tiny. I would see the car, and then I would see the ash of his cigar in the air. It didn't look like he could see over the dashboard. That's how tiny he was.
Wow.
When he left.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was. I mean, here comes a car driven by a cigar. And with John Denver, he was upset. One day he came in and he said, Grace Slick really hates me. And there was an article, in an interview with Grace Slick, the Jefferson Airplane, and she talked about John Denver in it. And she didn't have, a lot of glowing things to say about John Denver, but she did say he's a brilliant songwriter. As much as I don't like him, he's a brilliant songwriter. And so I said to John Denver, I said, John, I'd hold on to the fact that she called you brilliant and hold on to the fact that she called you a brilliant songwriter.
There you go.
Like I said, that's huge. That's huge. That's a compliment from a person who probably doesn't give out a lot of compliments.
Yeah, and of course you were also in Bad Manners, too. That's one film I might want to make note about as well.
You know about that film?
I know about that film. I guess there was you learned some bad manners when you were in the Blues Brothers, so you were prepared.
Well, I did things in Bad Manners that I'm happy. Well, it was a very eccentric character that would comb his hair and then smell the comb. He was very nuts and out there kind of guy. It was I love to do comedy. It's just a delight. Yeah. For me.
And of course, before we close off, must make note of Kathleen Freeman, no longer with us. Played the nun that beat them with the meter stick.
And then you played. Yeah, her name was the Penguin, and
the Penguin.
And she used the big, and also she can be seen a lot lately in old movies. And she has a history in Singing in the Rain.
Yep.
She's in Singing in the... she was the elocution teacher.
Yep.
And I could sue you. I could sue you. She was brilliant and so funny. Had great stories, and just part of the hang in the first one. Yep. Just great. Fabulous.
Of course, Steve Lawrence, and of course you had some directors in there, Frank Oz and Steven Spielberg making cameos too.
I guess they didn't have any work. I guess they couldn't get any work. Steven Spielberg, I've heard that name someplace.
Look, Frank Oz picking that standing there at the prison there, opening up the box there. John Belushi's stuff goes, one prophylactic, one soiled. That look on his.
I thought it was soiled, and I think he used chopsticks or something to hand it over. He was something. Yeah, but if I bump into, I've worked with Steven Spielberg once before, but it's a long story. But I want to, bump into him someplace and say, "Hey, I was in a movie with you." I want to do that line.
Yeah.
Or come up to him and say, "You were in the Blues Brothers, weren't you?" see how he responds.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're celebrating the Blues Brothers, one of the all-time great movies. I think it's the greatest movie to come out of Saturday Night Live, and I mean that. Fantastic movie, a masterpiece, a celebration of blues music. And before you go, would you please do a plug for my show?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just state your name and say you're listening to. My name is Greg Gilbert, and my show's called Python's Paradise.
Let me write down that the Python's Paradise. I'd have to write down. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Murphy Dunne from the movie The Blues Brothers, and I'm delighted to be on the air with Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. Don't go.